Welcome to a special edition of Apple Bites, sponsored by Limerick Post TV.
I mean, as I say, I don't think that I deserve to be sacked for what, or to have to resign as a minister for what I did.
Hi Willie, thanks for coming in and joining us here today. I just wanted to ask you, first of all, how difficult has the last few months been for you in light of what's happened personally? How have you carried it?
Yeah, it was very tough. I mean, a lot of people say to me quite genuinely that they realise what I've been through, but of course the fact is that they don't. Even though they think they do, they don't, because you've got to go through something like that to fully realise it. It's been, as you say, a very difficult period, very tough period, but you know, time is a great healer, and you know, it's passing, and every day we're getting more and more used to the situation, and I'm working away on the ground. So basically, recovering.
Another question I want to ask you, Willie, is this image of you in the media. You're a very well educated man, but there's this image out there of you. It's a very comical image. How does that affect you, and do you think it was to your detriment in the end, this comical image of you?
Well, you know, I mean, you know, people get media images, and I suppose that's a function of the media. That's the way the system works, and you know, sometimes you can do something about it, sometimes you can't. I mean, I did say at the time that I was unhappy with the treatment I received from the Irish Times in particular, and that hasn't changed, obviously. I mean, you know, I'm still quite unhappy about that, and I think that the Irish Times presented a very false image of the whole thing from start to finish. And because they're supposedly a respectable, middle-of-the-road newspaper, allegedly not aligned to any particular political persuasion, they carried a great deal more weight than say, some of the tabloids, who, you know, in my view, covered the matter much more responsibly. As I say, I'm very, very disappointed in the Irish Times. As I say, I haven't changed my views on that. The Irish Times take a view that if you're not sort of liberal, sort of slightly left, or maybe even more than slightly left, Dublin 4 type intellectual speaking with or pseudo-intellectual speaking with the right type of accent, that you're some sort of a troglodyte up from the country whose views don't deserve to be given any serious consideration. That's a very false image. It's very, very wrong. I mean, we all have our views, we all have our opinions. The fact that the Irish Times have a particular approach to people shouldn't dictate how they are presenting those people to the public at large. They're supposed to take people's views seriously if you express a serious opinion. It seems to me that a lot of the people, particularly Fianna Fáil backbenchers, that their views are sort of ridiculed and rubbished by the Irish Times simply because they don't like where they're coming from. And I think that's very wrong, and I think it's a very wrong type of journalism. I think it's a very unfortunate type of journalism, and I think it's the type of journalism that will hasten the decline of the print media, which is under a lot of pressure at the moment, as you know, and certainly that sort of journalism hasn't helped. I mean, if you look at what's happening in the whole information communication side, the internet, etc., people who are bloggers tend now to be almost as read in some circles as people in the mainstream media, and you know, if the mainstream media persist in having a particular attitude to people who are representing politicians or whoever, whether they be politicians or public figures of another type who are representing a large section of the electorate or of the public, that sort of thing is going to continue to go.
Now, Willie, Regeneration seems to be at a bit of a standstill. The projects are operating at a snail's pace. How do you feel about this at the moment? It's something that you brought to the city, and where does Regeneration stand at the moment?
Well, basically, it was never envisaged that you'd have a situation where there'd be a whole lot of boarded up houses and a whole lot of people moved into other areas. What was originally planned, as I understood it, was a kind of a Ballymun type situation, the way they regenerated Ballymun. They knocked it block by block, and as they knocked each block, they rebuilt it and put the people back in there, the people who'd been temporarily exiled from the area. Seems to have taken a different direction here. Why, I don't know, but I have made the point at government that we've now enough demolition. It's now time to see some rebuilding. So I'm very glad to say that my friend and colleague, the Minister for Housing, Michael Finneran, has undertaken that two fairly major projects, rebuilding projects, would start here this year. and I'm sure that commitment will be adhered to. As regards private investment, I mean, there is private investment there because I've actually met the investors, and I've brought it as late as within the last fortnight. I've brought a delegation, which included representatives of some of those investors, to the Minister to talk to him. The difficulty is that the pace on the ground is quite slow, as you say, at the moment. They haven't yet arrived at the point where they can actually use the money that would be put up by the private investors. The implementation plan, however, is to come before the Cabinet in the next week or two, as I understand it, and hopefully that will set out the roadmap. It'll tell the investors when they'll be able to come in, and hopefully that'll be as soon as possible, because we do need the private investment. The regeneration was always based on the premise that at least 50% of it would come from private investment.
Yeah. Finally, Willie, you seem very hard done by with the whole situation that's happened over the last 6 months. I'm just wondering, do you feel that you were wronged? Do you feel that you have been hard done by in this situation?
Well, you know, as the famous fictional chief whip in the Michael Dobbs novel would say, you might say that. I couldn't possibly comment. A lot of the people whom I meet feel that the punishment was certainly excessive for the crime. There was a crime, I suppose, in the sense that a civil, or at least a civil wrong, for which I paid very dearly financially. But in addition to that, I lost my job, and I was traduced by certain sections of the national media throughout the country. That has been hard, yeah. But I mean, you know, you go around then and you meet people that you've helped over the years, and they're offering their support. They're offering to canvass, which my canvass team has almost doubled in size, I would say, since this happened, and that gives you great heart. So there's always an upside in everything, no matter how disastrous it might appear on the surface. There's always an upside. So I'm the type of person who tends to concentrate on the upside. As I say, I don't think that I deserve to be sacked for what, or to have to resign as a minister for what I did. I don't think what I did was bad enough to warrant that. If you look at the situations in which some other ministers have had to resign over the years, it certainly pales into insignificance. Even if you look at the situation in which some ministers didn't have to resign.
Is that something that frustrates you? I mean, it wasn't something political. It wasn't an indictment of your political.
Well, it was something for which I already suffered a substantial financial penalty, a very heavy financial penalty, I might add, and it seemed somewhat excessive that the second penalty should then be applied. But of course, it is frustrating. Of course, it is upsetting. But as I say, you just don't. I'm the sort of person anyway who doesn't focus on that aspect of it. I tend to focus on the upset.